Lord Immolation is to the point of he can't even understand somebody as non-dualistic and materialist as me. He thinks I must not have been exposed to that. He can't even imagine that I might actually have this position and know the position I have and the ramifications of it.
Pyrrho. I was quite happy to move away from the subject of the legitimacy of metaphysics after I had made what I thought were two valid objections to your position. However, those objections still remain unanswered, and you go on to mischaracterize, misconstrue, and strawman what metaphysics is. So, your attack of the orthodoxy has not gone unnoticed. Allow me, a self-appointed spokesman for the said orthodoxy, to launch this counterattack.
Unleash hell.
I understand that there's many people that are just talking about metaphysics as looking into the fundamental principles that we base all of our knowledge on. And I'm fine with that. See, I do that. And I just think that when people call that studying metaphysics, that's nonsense.
Nonsense? This is what metaphysics is. It's an exploration into the first principles. It's discussion of causality, identity, existence. If you want to hold that such discussion is meaningless, then perhaps you can argue against the legitimacy of metaphysics. But once you're engaged in a debate and you yourself have given a definition of what you consider to be the first principles, you are doing metaphysics. You seem to have confused the verb to do metaphysics, to be engaged in a metaphysical discourse, with a noun, a specific metaphysics, a specific ontology, namely Platonism, Neoplatonism, Cartesianism, Transcendentalism, etc., etc., when this is nothing like the position which I hold.
And this is where the problem comes in and why I don't believe in metaphysics. Because, see, a belief in metaphysics makes us think, oh, the river failed. We went down to the river. It failed to be the same. It failed to maintain its identity somehow.
Again, a belief in metaphysics doesn't mean that the river failed. If someone accepts a strict notion of identity, such that the river at time 1 was different from the river at time 2, then you could argue that they failed to distinguish the river. However, there's no consensus view on metaphysics, and the idea of metaphysics is to construct an ontology specifically to deal with these kinds of problems.
I'm still going to question how applicable. Okay, A equals A is true in mathematics. I think it's pretty clear it works poorly in the real world.
You see, the fact that you actually made that video after I clarified the whole river identity thing in a way that was valid does kind of annoy me. I tried to clarify that A does equal A and your river example fails, but you completely ignore what I said in the previous video and instead go on to mischaracterize what metaphysics is. If you want to demonstrate to me that A doesn't equal A, show me something that it's not itself. That's the only way you're going to be able to do it.
It's because if there's multiple metaphysics, how are we going to judge which one to believe? Well, we're told we can't.
Actually, this is an interesting question, but your confusion largely stems from the confusion between the verb to do metaphysics and the noun metaphysics, as in a particular ontology. There are many ways that we can judge which ontologies are better. These are both, I will draw the distinction, internal and external. Now, we could rule out an ontology because it's internally contradictory. We could say that someone couldn't hold this position without falling into contradiction, as I did with you and your denying the law of excluded middle. We could also say that it fails externally. It fails to account for a particular phenomena which needs accounting for.
Lord Immolation is to the point of he can't even understand somebody as non-dualistic and materialist as me.
The thing is, though, I too am non-dualist. I too am a materialist. However, I'm aware that this is a metaphysical position. I'm a scientific naturalist. That is a metaphysical position. I have to rule out other possibilities by reason, because the advocates of those positions say that no evidence would be available. So I rule out dualism, I rule out theism, deism, non-intervening theism, panexperientialism, idealism, transcendentalism, etc., etc. I can rule these out because I use metaphysics. The reason that I cannot conceive of your position isn't because you're more materialist or non-dualist than me, it's because you reject the law of excluded middle. Therefore you allow contradiction into your theory. Now, I cannot conceive of a contradictory event. I can conceive of a paradox, but certainly not a contradiction. And I think any theory that is contradictory should be rejected.
He thinks I must not have been exposed.
And another reason that I don't think that you've been exposed to the type of metaphysics that you're talking about is because you've not once alluded to one reference. You've made points that have been discussed by previous metaphysicians and then dubbed all metaphysics to be meaningless. That's why I don't think you've been exposed. You continue to mischaracterize metaphysics, yet go on to discuss issues which are of great importance to the metaphysical discussion.
Well, Lord Immolation is getting tired of this debate.
Yes, I am getting a little bit bored of this debate. However, I do have one more thing to say, which is kind of based on this comment.
And belief in objective knowledge has been a problem in that real world. It is behind lots of violence, or if not behind, at least used to justify it.
Let me give you two objective facts. Evolution happened, and God does not exist. The fact that evolution happened isn't some subjective there. It actually happened. It was the case. It's true with a capital T. In much the same way that I believe God doesn't exist is true with a capital T. It's not down to opinion, it's a matter of fact. Your argument that objective knowledge leads to killing people is about as valid as Ben Stein's evolution leads to killing people statement, and should be treated with as much validity. Personally, I think that rigid and dogmatic adherence to a specific philosophy is a lot more problematic. Which brings me to another point. You say that you're a skeptic, yet you're very dogmatic in your skepticism. Let me give you an example.
Including the fact that maybe I'm wrong, but in this case I don't think there's really any chance that I'm wrong.
You certainly seem sure of that, considering your skeptical position. Something which I find to be contradictory, and is another reason for rejecting your specific ontology. I believe I've made my point quite clear, and the orthodoxy remains intact.